Hello and welcome. You're watching Middle East Now on I24 News. I'm Laura Sellier and these are the headlines. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio arrives in Riyadh, where he'll hear the Arab plan to counter President Trump's proposal to depopulate Gaza. Ukraine's President Zelensky arrives in the United Arab Emirates as the US and Russia hold talks in Saudi Arabia. And the IDF says it will hold on to 5 military posts in southern Lebanon, even as a ceasefire deal is set to expire tomorrow. First, I24 News has learned that Hamas will release the bodies of 5 Israeli hostages this Thursday, followed by 3 live hostages the following Saturday. The 8 are part of the remaining 14 hostages to be released in phase 1 of the deal. Overall, 70 hostages remain in Gaza. Let's get the very latest with our Joe Brown. He's down at Hostages Square in Tel Aviv. Joe, what more do we know at this stage?
Well, according to an Israeli source who has told this to I24 News, Israel will receive 5 bodies of hostages on Thursday. Hamas will announce the names of those 5 hostages in the morning, at which point Israeli ambulances will go to a designated point in either Gaza or around the Gaza border. They will pick up the bodies and they will take them to the Abu Kabir Forensic Institute in Tel Aviv, which is a specialist institute that focuses on unnatural deaths of autopsies, and only once they are formally recognised they will inform the families that their loved ones have died. But there's still a handful of hostages who are believed to be alive, as well as 8 who are believed to be dead in total in the Gaza Strip currently. That is what Hamas told Israel, and according to Israel that is what they believe. It is confirmed that one of those names is Shlomo Mansour, who was kidnapped aged 85 on October the 7th, killed, and his body remains in Gaza. It is unknown whether he is part of this deal, but the IDF has also informed the family of Oded Lifshitz a couple of weeks ago that there is grave concerns over his life. He was kidnapped at the age of 84, and they worry that due to his advanced age that he could very likely have died in captivity. And of course there is the Bibas family, Shiri Bibas and her 2 young children, Ariel and Kfir. The IDF have said that they fear for their lives. They didn't elaborate on what that means. It is likely that that is referring to perhaps some items of clothing or something that belongs to the Bibases that they have found in the tunnels in Gaza, but they do not know that yet. But as far as Israel is aware, there will be 5 bodies who will be returning on Thursday. This is part of the first phase of the ceasefire deal before 3 living hostages return on Saturday.
Joe, thank you very much. Joe Brown there. Well, as Israel and Hamas prepare to enter the second phase of a hostage and ceasefire deal, Arab states are gathered together in Saudi Arabia to come up with an alternative to President Trump's proposal to depopulate Gaza and take ownership of the Strip. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the US Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff are there to hear that plan, as is our senior correspondent Mike Wagenheim, who joins us now live from Riyadh. Mike, any signs yet of what kind of plan the Arab countries have managed to come up with?
No, I think we're just in the opening stages of this, Laura. Right now, not only MBS in the room with Rubio and Witkoff, as you mentioned, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz also joining in the talks here this evening in Riyadh. This is more right now the Trump administration trying to get Saudi Arabia to lead the way here. Donald Trump has this tendency of creating these maximalist policies and then looking for a ladder to climb down off that tree. It's much easier than falling down right on your behind. So at this point, he climbed up that tree with his announcement a few weeks ago, and now saying, hey, anybody else got any ideas? All eyes turning to the Saudis here. Why? Number one, because they're a leader in the region. They've led these types of initiatives multiple times. And number two, they've got the credibility to do it. Unlike you saw King Abdullah walk into the White House last week, and the main thing that came away with that was, well, he's dependent on American aid, and so he can't fight back, essentially. Same thing with Sisi in Egypt, who postponed his meeting with Trump until after an Arab summit on the issue coming up on February the 28th. But the Saudis, though they certainly welcome American partnerships and the aid that comes with it, aren't necessarily as dependent upon it as the Jordanians and the Egyptians, and so they can kind of go out on a limb more so than possibly their neighbors in the region here. So the Trump admin trying to get them really to take the reins on this particular issue, but they are certainly going to have to consult with their neighbors, the Egyptians, Jordanians, Emiratis, Omanis, whoever else wants to join in here and formulate really a coherent, feasible plan going forward.
Yeah, the ball very much in their court, as it were, Mike. But what if President Trump doesn't like the ideas that they come up with? Will he move ahead with his plan anyway?
We can only go based on history here, and the history says that Trump won't do that. Even recent history, what happened on Saturday? Trump said if all the hostages aren't released at high noon on Saturday, well, then it's a free-for-all, essentially. All bets are off. What happened, though? Well, he got to climb down off of that tree because Benjamin Netanyahu elected not to go forward with a military campaign in Gaza, at least not for the time being here. We've seen this repeat itself time after time. I think if the Arabs come up here with some kind of coherent way forward, even if all the I's aren't dotted and all the T's aren't crossed, even if Trump doesn't like every aspect of it, if it's something that really he can get behind and say, okay, this is also a path forward to get to where we need to go to, I think he'll be okay with it, even if it's not 100% in line with his vision, knowing that he doesn't have to send soldiers, knowing that he doesn't have to send massive amounts of money to the region as well, that somebody else can take responsibility, which I think is all he's looking for to begin with.
Mike Wagenheim in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, thank you very much. Well, earlier in the day, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he supported Trump's plan for Gaza and vowed that neither Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority would run the Strip after the war. Well, with me in the studio this hour, Lital Shochat-Chertau is a member of Forum Dvora. She's also the former spokesperson for the IDF's Galilee division. Welcome, Lital. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
And as we just heard from Mike, it is difficult to anticipate what President Trump is pushing for here. But on the hostages, he has said clearly, hasn't he, again and again, he wants all of the hostages returned, and the rest of it is pretty much up to Israel.
So there are a few things here. About the hostages, we've seen Witkoff challenging the Israeli government over and over again, saying that the directions that he got from President Trump are to bring to a final deal, to bring all of the hostages back. So that is definitely, I think, in American interest. We see that Trump has so many inner issues within the U.S. that there is a sense that when it comes to Israel and Gaza, we see it in the Ukraine, he is here to make deals. He wants to finalize all these open issues, especially when it comes to the Middle East. And we have to remember that it's not only the understanding that it's maybe the right moral thing to do to bring the hostages back. Trump has bigger aspirations when it comes to the Middle East, whether it be Saudi and Israel coming to a peace agreement and other issues. And Mike rightfully said, we see that there is, some sort of movement within these Arab nations when it comes to the future of Gaza. Trump did throw the ball to see who catches it, and I think for the first time maybe we see that the Arab nations aren't putting all the all the balls to say on Israel or the U.S. They understand that they need
to take some responsibility.
They need to take responsibility and they need to take initiative. The question is, what are all these deals, these plans are? We see one that the Palestinian Authority offered.
Well, quite sorry to interrupt, but on that note, President Trump hasn't said, like Prime Minister Netanyahu has said, that the PA cannot rule Gaza, has he?
No, he hasn't. He didn't put any restrictions to the future of Gaza when it comes to what is it going to be exactly. And I think that's the interesting thing. Mike rightfully said, if Trump sees any, any deal that doesn't have to, make the U.S. be fully invested in the future of Gaza, I think he will be for it. The question is, are the Saudis or the Egyptians or the Palestinian Authority, when they come up with these plans, are they willing to not only provide for the funds and the money, who's going to be the boots on the ground? And we can talk about it further on the show. It's the same issue, and Hamas is also trying to talk about maybe a Lebanese model for Gaza, where they are the ones holding the force and maybe having some other puppet semi-demi administration trying to run the civil life in Gaza.
Which would be acceptable to Israel either. Lital, for now, thank you very much indeed. Stay with us. Well, let's bring in some voices from the region now, because Jordan and Egypt are scrambling to come up with an alternative to President Trump's proposal. Trump tapped both countries to take in Gazan refugees using US aid as leverage. Well, to talk more about that, we're joined by Dalia Ziada. She's an Egyptian scholar and senior fellow at the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Welcome, Dalia. We're also joined by Dr. Nasir Al-Amari. He's an independent writer and political commentator from Jordan. Good to have you with us as well, Nasir. So, Dalia, I'll start with you, because yesterday in Doha, we heard Hamas officials saying pretty clearly they will not be cut out of the future of Gaza. How will the Egyptians persuade them otherwise?
Thank you, Laura. Always a pleasure to be with you, and happy to be joined also with Dr. Nasir today. I think Hamas, of course, Hamas is very clear about its ambitions and goals. It's not going to leave Gaza anytime soon, and this is the reason why they are putting all the shows we are seeing when they are releasing hostages. It's a projection of power. They are showing that we are in control of Gaza and we are not going anywhere. The things that Egypt right now is in a big dilemma, like I think most of the Arab countries after President Trump's statements, he put them in front of their responsibilities actually and made them now obliged to walk the talk that they have been saying for a while about. In Egypt, for example, we have been seeing the president himself singing all types of love to the Palestinians and the Palestinian cause, and standing on stage and saying, Tahya Palestine, Viva Palestine. And so, while when it comes to actually helping the Palestinian people on the ground, they are not willing to offer anything, even the simple act of opening the border to receive some refugees, especially those who are injured and those who need medical treatment. So I don't think it's in Egypt's best interest to try to convince Hamas to leave Gaza anytime soon, because it will require Egypt's intervention, perhaps military intervention, in order to, not intervention in a negative way. I mean, it will require Egyptian troops' presence on the ground in Gaza in order to protect against any acts by radical groups, and also to protect Egypt's national security. And this is something Egypt is not willing to do anytime soon. All
right, thank you, Dalia. Well, let me bring in Nasir Al-Amari, because Jordan's king, he made a kind of a limited gesture, if we could say. He will agree to take in 2,000 Gazan children and their families, presumably. Do you think that was enough to get the Americans off Jordan's back?
Hello, Dalia and Laura. Thank you for having me. Well, it's not enough for President Trump. It's obvious that he's talking about clearing Gaza, and the king deferred to the Egyptians, and it seems that there is a plan out there, and it's a counter-offer. Trump wants to evict all the Gazans. It seems the Egyptian, Jordanian, Saudi plan is to get rid of Hamas and to start reconstruction of Gaza, and to they enveloped all of that, and a return to peace talks and a Palestinian state. Hamas seems to be open to not playing a role in a future Gaza. However, my perception of this Hamas acceptance is that they do not want to put more pressure on Jordan and Egypt. So they want to seem like they are open to the counter offer. Their goal is to stick around, probably get some aid to the Palestinians and start some type of reconstruction effort. And that way they avert the Trump plan, and everybody comes out, a winner. However, I'm not sure if this meets the Trump ambition or the Israeli government's ambition of more radical change on the ground, including what Mr. Netanyahu described as, Trump's plan and his preference to that plan. He's open to it. So this is what the players are doing, and I think there are a lot of details to be discussed if this is to even take off.
All right, thank you, Nasir. So, Dalia, I mean, if President Trump doesn't like the plan coming out of Saudi Arabia, he might go ahead and cut off aid to Egypt if they refuse to go along with his plan. I mean, how much of a problem is that for Cairo? Do they have a contingency plan if the Americans do cut them off?
To be honest, all the offers, all the proposals offered by Arab leaders right now are just a repetition or a copy of formal plans that were applied in previous episodes of the war between Hamas and Israel and the situation in Gaza in general. And actually, we have been seeing this scenario repeated over at least 25 years or so, and it has never led to an actual reconstruction and actual stability inside Gaza. So what they are trying to do now is to rephrase what the Arab leaders, are trying to do now is to rephrase and reintroduce the same things they have been doing previously in order to convince President Trump to change his mind about the plan. At the same time, on the domestic level, they are promoting the issue as if it is a conspiracy theory targeting the national security of these Arab countries. If you see the Egyptian media, you will be amazed by how now they are projecting all types of attacks on President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu as part of a bigger conspiracy to destroy Egypt's security and stability, which is absolutely not true. And the situation in Gaza and fixing the situation in Gaza will help everyone in the region to stabilize and be more secure. Egypt also is facing even a bigger dilemma in its crisis with the Trump administration. And I know the word crisis is a very big word, but actually the situation is clearly heading into a crisis now because the U.S. can easily use the U.S. military aid it offers to Egypt as a pressure or as a card to pressure Egypt, and this will put Egypt in a very difficult situation given its very complicated economic crisis that we have been suffering for about at least 7 years now.
All right, Dalia, thank you. Nasir, just a word on the Gulf states, if you would. Qatar was not invited to this summit, but we know how much influence they have over Hamas. Just your thoughts on why they weren't invited, and also what about Saudi Arabia? They're leading the talks here. How much of a role are they playing, and how does this fit in with their plans to get a defense treaty with the United States?
I think the Saudis want to replace the Qataris in Gaza. They are willing to probably contribute to the reconstruction of Gaza. Qatar, represented by Al Jazeera, are still talking about Hamas, being victorious and having the upper hand. So I think that we have a change of hands here. If the Saudis, Egyptians, and Jordanians are to come in, definitely Hamas will not be a player in any future plans. But make no mistake about it, Mohammed bin Salman wants to play that role to replace Qatar and other countries in leading the peace effort in the region.
Dr. Nasir El Amari and Dalia Ziada, thank you very much indeed to you both.
Thank you.
And Litala Shochat-Cherta is still with me in the studio. Just your reaction to everything you've just heard.
You know, it's interesting to see that on the outside, we see that the Arab countries they're always for the Palestinians, and they always try to encourage them and support them, and they want the state for them. But we have to remember, and we're, by the way, going to see it next week when the Arab League is going to convene in Cairo. But the interesting thing about these Arab countries, specifically Saudi, Jordan, and Egypt, we have to remember that their inner interests are even greater when it comes to the future of Gaza. We're only 14 years after the Arab Spring. We understand that for Egypt, having Hamas in power in Gaza is a threat. You know, she just spoke about the fact that they're not even opening their borders. They're not willing. It's not an Egyptian interest to have the Palestinians flood in from Gaza to Egypt. We know that Sisi doesn't want the Muslim Brotherhood, which is affiliated with Hamas, to take over Egypt or retake over Egypt. So we have to understand that these inner interests and keeping their own regimes, both in Egypt and Jordan, in power is something that is very important for them, and having thousands or tens of thousands of Palestinians flood into their countries could be a risk to their own administration.
Even when Egypt is 100 million population,
of course,
we're talking about
you know, it only takes a few. And for Saudi, we have to remember they're interested in getting the jets from the U.S. They're interested in a peace deal with Israel. They have greater economic both ambitions and interests in the region. Gaza, you know, is a step on the way to there.
And just in terms of President Trump really shaking up the conversation, I mean, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was in Israel yesterday, and he said, you know, Trump isn't someone who keeps repeating tired old slogans, which have been said about this conflict for many years. And one of those slogans, of course, relates to the issue of Palestinian refugees, as they're termed. And these are, you know, millions of people who live in Jordan who are the descendants of refugees, but who are actually citizens of Jordan. I mean, all of this is being brought under the spotlight now, isn't it?
So talking about Palestinian refugees, I think it's a Pandora box. And if the Trump administration really wants to shake things up, and it seems as if they're on their way to there, they have to reassess UNRWA. And they have to reassess the status of Palestinian refugees, which is inherited generation after generation, both in Lebanon, both in Jordan and in Israel and in all the territories. So if they want to really change these things, we have to redefine what are refugees. And we see refugees in the Middle East all over the place. We see Lebanon and Syria having hundreds of thousands of refugees moving back and forth from Syria to Lebanon and now from Lebanon to Syria.
Well, a million Syrians in Europe, for example.
Exactly. So we understand that eventually there'll need to be some sort of, and we talked about it, boots on the ground resolution, both from Gaza and obviously for other countries surrounding Israel. The question is, which boots are going to be on the ground there?
That's the big question, isn't it? Lital, for now, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, negotiations over the second phase of the hostage and ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas are set to begin, but the Trump administration insists it will happen. More in this report.
500 days. That's the number of days the hostages have been held in Gaza. Amid rallies across Israel to keep up the pressure for the hostage ceasefire deal, and amid a lot of uncertainty over the second phase of the agreement, U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff gave his assurances that there will absolutely be a second phase to the deal.
Well, phase two is a little bit more complicated than phase one. But phase two is absolutely going to begin. I've actually had calls this morning, I can tell you, about the sequencing of phase two, setting forth positions on both sides so we can understand where we level set where we are today, and then continuing talks this week at a location to be determined so that we can figure out how we get to the end of phase two successfully.
Phase 2 of the deal is meant to include the release of all living hostages that were not included in the first phase. Most of those are now men who are soldiers or of fighting age, a detail Hamas has used as an extra token in negotiations in order to further its own agenda.
It just is a little bit more intricate and complicated in terms of how we bring the two sides together on this, because phase two contemplates an end of the war, but it also contemplates Hamas not being involved in the government and being gone from Gaza. So we've got to square those two things.
Reiterating the U.S. administration's position on the hostages, Witkoff also attended an event in Miami on Sunday, marking the 500 days since the massacre at the Nova Festival.
We are not leaving anybody behind.
That being said, however, negotiations for the second phase of the deal will only begin after Monday's Security Cabinet meeting. An Israeli delegation has been sent to Cairo for talks meanwhile, but only to guarantee the continuation of the first phase of the hostage deal, which came close to a collapse just last week. With 73 hostages still being held in Gaza, hostage families are keeping up the pressure amid so much uncertainty over the deal's future.
Lee Talley still with me in the studio. So phase 2 is much more difficult to negotiate. It involves the remaining hostages, all of whom are young men, and it also requires Israel essentially withdrawing completely from Gaza. Is there a contradiction bringing those people home and defeating Hamas?
Definitely. There's no question that the right thing to do, the moral thing to do, is to bring them home. The time isn't working in our benefit. We see the people coming back. We hear the testimonies that we have young men who have been chained till this day in tunnels where they can't even stand up for over 500 days. These people need to get back, period. They need to be saved. The question is now, how are they going to maneuver the fact that Hamas does want to move forward to the second stage because they do want to get to the end of the war. They're not, their situation in Gaza isn't getting any better. So it is a Hamas interest to move forward. But with Israel talking about, by the way, with an American encouragement, talking about going back, continuing the war, looking into solutions that don't include Hamas in Gaza the day after. These things obviously contradict, and it's going to be very interesting to see how Witkoff and the American team is going to try to maneuver both sides in order to get to some sort of solution.
Well, now that Israel has this rock-solid support from the United States, do you think it would be able to go back into Gaza? And militarily speaking, would that even be possible?
I think that history taught us that one way or another, Israel and Gaza, it's not the end of the story. The question is, how wide this future operation is going to be. What are the targets? Are they still targeting the heads of Hamas, the infrastructure? 70% of Gaza buildings are ruined already, even higher numbers in the northern of Gaza. So the question is, what is the purpose? Is the purpose just for internal political Israeli, targets, or is it actually going to achieve any security for Israel?
All right, Lisa Halpern, thank you very much. Stay with us. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, the IDF says it will hold on to 5 military posts inside southern Lebanon, even though a ceasefire agreement expires tomorrow. We'll have more on that next. Stay with us.
Copper, heat therapy, cold therapy, Theralite warm-up, microcurrent tech, extension handle. This is the ProSage Thermo Copper, the latest percussion massage gun tech advancement available from Evertone. The ProSage Thermo Copper is the only 6-in-1 percussion massage gun with warm-up technology, hot and cold therapy, microcurrent, and now are you ready for this? The benefits of copper. Get deep muscle warm-up technology and a professional athlete-level massage for full body recovery and relief. Back in 2018, Evertone's invention of the ProSage created the craze in the market for advanced professional-level percussion massage. Featured on The Talk, Entertainment Tonight, CNN, and others, the ProSage Thermo Copper 6-in-1 is a powerful percussion massager with our patented Theralite warm-up technology, advanced copper head therapy with unique copper benefits, our proprietary heat therapy head for deep muscle penetration, and the cold therapy head for soreness and inflammation, microcurrent tech for pain recovery and restoration, and it even comes with our newest extension handle so you can reach anywhere on your body. This makes the cordless ProSage Thermo Copper 6-in-1 with 5 unique massage heads the most advanced professional level massage gun available. The gold standard in massage guns is now the ProSage Thermal Copper with targeted pain relief.
You live in Israel or you are preparing for your Aliyah? Congratulations. You have a smartphone? Perfect. Download the Olim app for free and discover everything we have to offer. Booking medical and administrative appointments, bills paying, debt verification, instant translation, contractor recommendation, request tracking, and much more. And if you can't manage it on your own, our team speaks your language and assists you with all your procedures in Israel, starting from 199 shekels per month, unlimited and for the whole family. Don't hesitate any longer. Download the app or contact us.
Welcome back. Now, tomorrow marks the deadline for Israel to withdraw its troops from southern Lebanon as an extended ceasefire agreement expires. But the IDF says it will retain 5 positions inside Lebanon. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said yesterday that Hezbollah remained a threat. And though Israel prefers the Lebanese army to disarm the Iranian-backed group, it will act if necessary. Well, Lebanon's new president, Joseph Aoun, says he's concerned Israel will not withdraw on time. Well, to talk more about that, we're joined by Hanin Radar. She's a Friedman Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute, and she's the author of this book, Hezbollah Land, which is a book about the Dahia suburb, the stronghold of Hezbollah in the Lebanese capital, Beirut. And Hanin joins us now. Thank you very much for being with us on the programme. Hanin, so
thank you for having me.
This pledge by the IDF to hold on to these 5 military posts in Lebanon, this does put President Aoun under some pressure, doesn't it? Because Hezbollah is saying he must insist that the IDF withdraw. He's a new president. His government is quite fragile. Does this undermine him, do you think?
Of course, some kind of presence inside Lebanon by the Israeli troops can be used by Hezbollah as a raison d'etre for, their rhetoric, resistance rhetoric, and some pressure of the Lebanese government. But that's not really the main concern. They do understand, the president does understand, and the new prime minister and the government do understand that this is not the issue. The real issue is really...
Oh, we've got a bit of a problem there. Let's try and get Hanin back, please. Hanin over in the United States. We'll try and get her back with us. Lital Shachat-Chertaz with me in the studio. Sadly, we just lost Hanin, but we'll try and get her back on the line quickly. But what's your point? Do you think that the IDF should hold on to these 5 military posts inside Lebanon?
I think the IDF is first and for all meant to keep the people of Israel safe. And having Hezbollah on the Israeli border up north, whoever knows the terrain, there are mountains, there are parts where Israeli citizens are completely surrounded by Lebanese villages or Hezbollah villages. So for sure, until we have a force that can stand against Hezbollah, the IDF will have to stay there.
All right, thank you, Lital. Hold that thought, because I want to bring Hanin back in. We fixed that technical problem. Sorry about that, Hanin. Do continue with what you were saying.
Yes, I was saying that this is really not the real issue. They all understand the necessity of Israel staying in these 5 points from an Israeli perspective. And it is a challenge for President Aoun and the new government, because it is kind of, Hezbollah can use it as, in this resistance rhetoric, as like an occupation point. However, they understand that this is not the issue. The issue is Hezbollah's arms. And they do understand that until Hezbollah's arms are completely seized by the Lebanese army and the Lebanese government, and until Hezbollah is completely disarmed across Lebanon, there's no reason to cry occupation at this point, because this is the agreement that everybody signed. And Hezbollah itself signed off on the agreement, and they understand that as long as one Hezbollah soldier is armed in Lebanon, the Israelis are not going to let go. And this is part of the understanding, even if, it's a side letter, doesn't matter. They understand what's at stake. So even if Hezbollah really uses this resistance rhetoric, and even if they use it in order to pressure the new government and the new president, it's not going to really sell. It's not going to sell in the political dynamics, because everybody today understands that this is a new era in Lebanon, and a new era where Hezbollah is extremely weakened. And after what happened yesterday, or the past 2 days at the airport, with the airport saga, we can talk about this later, they do today understand that the army is capable of containing them. It's really about a political decision, and if the political decision comes from the president that this is it, the army is going to disarm Hezbollah, they can do it. The president today is trying to prevent street clashes between the army and Hezbollah that are still armed. Because although Israel disrupted Hezbollah's military infrastructure, their big missiles, the strategic missiles, Hezbollah still does have light arms that they can use internally. And this is what the president is worried about, and trying to find a solution to implement the resolution without really causing Hezbollah to use its light arms against the Lebanese and the Lebanese army. They showed us a sample of how this can be done within Dahi 2 days ago. So this is really the challenge for the president. It's not really the occupation, quote unquote, of Israeli 5 points. It's like how to make sure Hezbollah doesn't really use their arms as the Lebanese army disarms them.
So you're referring to Iran trying to fly in cash weapons supplies to Hezbollah, and then the Lebanese government said, no, you can't land here because the United States has told us that Israel will bomb Beirut airport if those planes arrive. So
correct.
Do you think that's been enough then? They will stop that Iranian resupply getting through now?
For now, yes. The first statement came from the Lebanese government saying that Iranian airlines are not going to land in Lebanon until the 18th. Today, they extended this deadline until further notice, which means that Iranian flights will not land in Lebanon. But that's not really the only issue, because Iran has been able to use other flights to bring in money to Hezbollah. Some of the flights coming from Iran directly, of course, very important. But of course, the flights coming from Iraq are as dangerous, because this is where Hezbollah and Iran's economic and financial networks thrive. And they have been using other people coming from different countries. So there has to be more severe measures, monitoring more planes, monitoring more flights, making sure that there's a political decision to do this. This is a good start, I would say, stopping the Iranian flights from coming to Lebanon. But this has come after a lot of pressure from the international community.
Okay,
and after Israel made a clear threat. So it's not really, they didn't really have a choice.
And so you say you think this is the beginning of a new era for Lebanon. Talk to me a bit about that then, because of course you grew up in Lebanon, you've been studying it over the years, you've written a book about it. Are you confident then that this time, this new government, with strong support from the United States, can really turn the page, get the economy going, you know, make Lebanon a functional country again?
Strong support, I would say strong support and strong pressure, not just strong support, because there is some signs of, if you want, like winds of change coming through this government. But I wouldn't say this is like completely the government that's going to solve all the problems. Let's point out that this government is going to last only for a year and a few months, because after the next parliamentary elections in May 2026, we will have a new government. So this is a very this is going to be short-lived government that will not be able to resolve everything. However, it has three main missions. One is to prepare for fair elections, make sure that Hezbollah doesn't use the elections to maintain its political representation, make sure that they implement 1701 and ceasefire agreement, and three, start an economic recovery plan. However, knowing how Lebanese political circles function and how the Lebanese dynamics can only be hindered, are always hindered by political and sectarian differences, the international community cannot blink, simply cannot blink. As much as Israel is not blinking, the international community, especially the Trump administration, cannot blink. There should always be pressure on Lebanon in the sense that deliveries, versus assistance. If Lebanon wants this kind of assistance, then you have to see deliveries. And this is the only way, unfortunately, it's going to work. And make sure that Lebanon's priorities are in order. Because reforms are extremely important for Lebanon. But I think reforms cannot be done without sovereignty, and make sure that Lebanon's government, this government, has sovereignty and disarming Hezbollah as its bigger title before really starting talking about the details. We need a political statement.
All right, so a little bit of carrot and a lot of stick from the international community to get Lebanon going again. Hanin Radar, author of Hezbollah Land, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, Lital Shochat-Chertao is with me in the studio. So, I mean, you heard there a Lebanese expert. She grew up in Lebanon. She studies Hezbollah. She's an expert. She's pretty optimistic about the future.
She's not wrong. I mean, we do see shifts. We see things moving in Lebanon, probably for the first time in many years, but we have to also remember Lebanon is a very divided country. Yes, they're Lebanese, but they're Shiite, they're Sunni, they're Christian, they're Druze. And we see them, the way that the administration in Lebanon is built is founded on these different sects within Lebanon. So while Hezbollah is not only a terror organization, it's the largest armed force in Lebanon. It's also a political party holding a third, if I'm not mistaken, of the Lebanese government. So until Hezbollah will be a persona non grata in Lebanon, I don't see an immense change. I think we do see positive signs. It's interesting to see, is it just, to please this international current pressure? How long is it going to hold? And she was talking about holding the UN Resolution 1701. According to Resolution 1701, Hezbollah cannot have any military presence south of the Litani River, meaning in the entire south of Lebanon.
We're a long way from that still.
And already today we see Hezbollah operatives going around in South Lebanon, going back to the villages that they're not supposed to, putting up their Hezbollah flags. Just today on Mount Dov, we saw underground infrastructure by Hezbollah that the IDF had to blow up. We found immense missiles and all these stashes of missiles and rockets still gathered and spread all over South Lebanon. So I think that these are steps maybe that we talk about in the entire Middle East. We see all these countries moving, shaking in their seats and taking these different steps to please the U.S. and their international community. But Hezbollah, unfortunately, in my opinion, is still a very significant military force in Lebanon, and especially in South Lebanon. And until that changes, I'm assuming they will keep the pressure internally, both on the political aspect and when it comes to holding power in the country.
Lital Shochat-Chertao from Forum Dvora, thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Iran's supreme leader has warned against what he called soft war tactics to try and sow discord in the Islamic Republic. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said Iran's military defences were sound, but said that efforts to manipulate public opinion were casting doubt over the foundations of the Republic. He also acknowledged Iran's economic crisis, and for that he blamed international sanctions. Let's bring in Camelia Entekabifard. She's the editor-in-chief of the Independent Persian. Great to see you, Camelia, as always. So what is Khamenei referring to specifically then when he talks about efforts to sow discord? Is this a reference perhaps to Israeli and American leaders talking about the difference between the regime and the Iranian people?
Thank you very much, dearest Laura, for hosting. Greetings to you. Mainly when Khamenei was referring about these soft war tactics, before was main angle was to speaking about the Western powers, yes, such as the US, Europeans, which they were dividing Iranian peoples, and they tried to spread the ideas of the regime has been defeated economically, managing, leading the nation. But most recently, he's speaking about the media tactics to influence the public opinion, especially the Persian media, which they are outside of the country. They have a main power to lead the public opinion. And perhaps another reason Khamenei was so much eager to encourage his followers to confront that kind of the soft power is the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, who is in exile in the United States. Recently, his activities in social media has been increased, meeting the politicians in the West to everywhere and introducing himself as the leading leader, as an alternative after the regime change in Iran. Knowing his popularity and knowing his credibility and introducing himself as the leader of the oppositions outside Iran, it can be another fears for the supreme leader to encourage all of the system to come and confront such activities, especially in the media and social media.
Okay, and what about the military aspect then, Camelia? Because Khamenei is insisting that his country can defend itself. This, of course, is stark contradiction to Israel's assessment that Iran's air defences are all but destroyed.
Yes. I believe Iran and Israel both at this stage, after this couple of times attack each other, are heavily engaged about psychological warfare. Yes, Israelis were saying they have destroyed Iran defense systems and Iran is no longer capable to defend itself if they want to strike or get fully engaged in a war between the two countries. But at the same time, Iranian were not much has been relying on their air power defense. They were mainly looking after like their internal or domestic made drones, missiles, and also the proxies they have in the region. Recently, Khamenei pointed that if they're needed, they would ask to increase the range of the missiles they can hit in a longer ranges if Iran will constantly has been faced with threats. If any war broken between Iran and Israel, that wouldn't be the classical war we were thinking of. That could be mainly over Iran's missile and drones, and of course Israel, if they had the backup of the US, having an aim to destroy Iran nuclear facilities. That have to be examined, the situation between Iran and Israel.
Camelia and Caprified, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. Well, staying with Iran, a British couple has been detained there on so-called security charges. They were on a motorcycle trip across the country. Their family and the British government expressing grave concern for their fate. Our Lynn Plachmeier has this report.
A British couple has been detained in the city of Kerman in southern Iran. The UK Foreign Ministry confirmed on Saturday that the two detainees are Craig and Lindsay Foreman, both 52, and that they were arrested while motorcycling around the world. Last week, Iranian state media released photographs of Britain's ambassador to Iran, Hugo Shorter, meeting with two British nationals who were being detained for, quote, security crimes, but did not name the couple and blurred their faces. The family of the couple said that their situation was distressing and causing, quote, significant concern. They shared a statement saying, "This unexpected turn of events has caused significant concern for our entire family, and we are deeply focused on ensuring their safety and well-being during this trying time." Craig and Lindsay Foreman were heading to Australia, where Lindsay, a life coach with a doctorate in psychology, was supposed to present the findings of her travels to a Brisbane psychology conference in July. The couple reportedly entered Iran via Armenia. They planned on staying in Iran for only 5 days before crossing into Pakistan. On Facebook, before entering Iran, they said, "Iran and Pakistan, both countries that have sparked so much debate and concern among our friends and family. The UK government advises against all but essential travel to these areas, and the news paints a pretty grim picture. But here's the thing. Overlanders and travelers who ventured through these regions speak of nothing but warm hospitality, incredible landscapes, and memories that last a lifetime. We want to find out for ourselves. That is why we are here. We believe that wherever they come from, most humans are good, kind people, wanting to live a good life." Iran has a history detaining and releasing Western nationals on trumped-up security charges. In 2022, British Iranian aid worker Nazanin Zaghari Radcliffe was released after 6 years of detention after being convicted of plotting to overthrow Iran's government.
Well, as we've been reporting, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in Saudi Arabia. He's there to talk about Gaza, but also he'll be meeting with Russian officials to talk about ending the war in Ukraine. The talks begin tomorrow, but there's one notable exception. Ukraine's President Zelensky, he wasn't invited, but has been asked to meet with Emirati leaders in Abu Dhabi, and he arrived in the UAE earlier today. Well, to talk more about all of that, we're joined by Louai Al-Sharif. He's a peace activist and an expert in Arab-Israeli relations. Good to see you, Louai. Thank you very much for being with us. So this is a major diplomatic coup, first of all, for Saudi Arabia, isn't it? But just talk us through Riyadh's interest, in particular, when it comes to ending the conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
Well, Riyadh wants to emerge as a key player in world peace, and I believe that Prince Mohammed bin Salman wants to depict himself as he is, of course, as a peacemaker, as someone who really wants to end conflicts, because this would give him also credibility for other conflicts in the region to resolve. Now the Ukrainian president, as you mentioned, is now here in the UAE, and the president of the UAE, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, made very positive statements that just a couple of minutes ago, that any effort that would lead to ending the war between Russia and Ukraine is appreciated and is welcome. So that, I mean, says a lot about the so-called rivalry between Saudi Arabia and the UAE when it comes to resolving the Ukrainian-Russian conflict.
You say that they're working in tangent here.
Yes, I do believe so. All the vibes in the UAE lead to this conclusion, and I believe it's in everyone's interest to end this war between Russia and Ukraine. And this would give any country that would do it, Saudi Arabia or the UAE. I want to tell you one thing, Laura. Everyone sees it as a mutual win for all the Arabs, for all the Arab nations, for all the Gulf states. If Saudi Arabia does it, or if the UAE does it, both countries are in the, as Yusuf Al-Utaiba, the ambassador of the UAE to the United States, said, we are in the solution-making businesses. So I believe that it would be appreciated if Saudi Arabia does it or if the UAE does it. Both countries are great countries, great nations that are involved in the solution making business and in bringing world peace and ending conflicts. And these are the policies of the UAE and of Saudi Arabia.
Well, is the leadership of the UAE planning to support President Zelensky? Because he, of course, has said in the last few days that he's very unhappy with the fact that the Americans and the Russians are meeting. They're holding their meeting in Riyadh, and he hasn't been invited. Is the fact that he's been invited to the UAE a sign of support from that country, which, of course, also has a great deal of diplomatic clout?
I do believe the UAE will support all the efforts that would lead to ending the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, supporting Zelensky, supporting the peace negotiations with President Putin. Anything that would lead to ending this conflict, the UAE will support it. Now, of course, Zelensky made some comments that he wasn't even invited to Riyadh, but I don't believe that this would hinder the process or the efforts to leading this kind of peace agreement, because in the negotiations when it leads, this reminds me, Laura, of the 1978 peace between Egypt and Israel. You had so many things. Oh, Begin will not attend Camp David. Sadat will not attend. Sadat broke the attendance and he went back, and then Carter tried to mediate. These things happen when you are so close to making a breakthrough. And I believe we are on the verge of making a breakthrough to the Ukrainian-Russian war by making a permanent peace, inshallah.
And it's interesting, Louai, isn't it? Because in Riyadh and Abu Dhabi this week, they're talking about ending conflict. They're talking about constructive ways to move forward. This is a stark contrast to what we've seen from Qatar, which is hosting and supporting terrorists. I mean, do you think that will have implications for the Gulf further down the road?
First of all, I do wish that Qatar leadership play a more positive role in bringing peace to the region, and I believe they are capable of doing so. And I believe they really want the Middle East to look better, because the statements that were made last night from a Hamas spokesman about the day after, and that Hamas will still ruling Gaza, when it came from a conference hosted in Qatar, that sends very negative impressions. I do believe that Qatar as a state really wants to have more peace in the region, more stability, but actions speak louder than words. That's speaking of Qatar. The UAE and Saudi Arabia are always in the conflict ending business, making more peace, closing the gaps on the conflicts. And I look forward, inshallah, to seeing this peace happens. Whether it happens in Saudi Arabia or in the UAE, both countries would cherish it. Both countries will celebrate it. Both countries would actually welcome this kind of peace. And it would give credibility to both countries and to all the countries in the Middle East to end more conflicts, and hopefully the biggest one, which is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
And of course, we're hoping there are going to be big changes in the region in the form of some kind of agreement between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Do you see that as more likely than ever right now?
I'm very optimistic. Despite all the challenges, I see eventually Saudi Arabia and Israel will normalize relations. Of course, Saudi Arabia made it publicly that so many things need to be done, especially a Palestinian state or a pathway. We have to read between the lines very good what the Saudis are saying, a pathway to a Palestinian state. And by the way, Laura, I just tweeted today that the Palestinians themselves can stop President Trump plan by advancing a Palestinian leadership that would come out loud publicly and say, we are willing to live side by side with Israel, not on the footsteps of Oslo. No, we are willing to live side by side with Israel. We are going to teach our kids not to hate the Jews, not to hate the Israelis. We are going to raise a generation that will look to the Israelis as neighbors, and we are going to live together on this land side by side, thriving, collaborating, advancing in AI, moving things forward. If this leadership emerges, I believe President Trump's plan will not happen. But I think that President Trump knows that such a leadership doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. And this is why he made so many plans that are actually, that comes from the audacity way of thinking, honestly.
Thinking outside the box, absolutely, Luai. There are big changes afoot in the region, and the big conversations are happening in the Gulf. Thank you very much, Luai. We appreciate it, as always. Luai Al-Sharif there.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Well, just a quick reminder of the top news this hour, and Israel is preparing to receive the bodies of either 4 or 5 hostages this Thursday. 3 live hostages will be released the following Saturday. We'll have reactions to that. This is down at Hostages Square in Tel Aviv, and more when Benita Levine takes over with tonight's rundown. Thanks for watching. Stay with us.
Copper, heat therapy, cold therapy, Theralite warm-up, microcurrent tech, extension handle. This is the ProSage Thermo Copper, the latest percussion massage gun tech advancement available from Evertone. The ProSage Thermo Copper is the only 6-in-1 percussion massage gun with warm-up technology, hot and cold therapy, microcurrent, and now are you ready for this? The benefits of copper. Get deep muscle warm-up technology and a professional athlete-level massage for full body recovery and relief. Back in 2018, Evertone's invention of the ProSage created the craze in the market for advanced professional-level percussion massage. Featured on The Talk, Entertainment Tonight, CNN, and others, the ProSage Thermo Copper 6-in-1 is a powerful percussion massager with our patented Theralite warm-up technology, advanced copper head therapy with unique copper benefits, our proprietary heat therapy head for deep muscle penetration, and the cold therapy head for soreness and inflammation. Microcurrent tech for pain recovery and restoration. And it even comes with our newest extension handle, so you can reach anywhere on your body. This makes the cordless ProSage Thermocopper 6-in-1 with 5 unique massage heads, the most advanced professional level massage gun available. The gold standard in massage guns is now the ProSage Thermocopper with targeted pain relief.
This is the rundown on I-24 News. I'm Benita Levine. It's exactly 500 days since the darkest day in the history of Israel, the surprise Hamas terror assault and mass abduction in southern Israel, in which more than 1,200 people were shot, tortured and butchered at a music festival, in their homes and at bases on the Jewish festival of Simchat Torah, usually a time of joy. Today, 73 hostages remain in captivity. They range in age from baby Kfir Bibas, who was 9 months old at the time of the abduction, to elderly peace activists from the region. 3 living male hostages are expected to be freed by terror groups in Gaza this Saturday, part of phase 1 of the ceasefire deal. And now, I-24 News sources confirming just a short while ago that the IDF is preparing for several bodies of murdered hostages to be returned from Gaza on Thursday. President Donald Trump had said he would expect all hostages to be released by noon this past Saturday, but added that Israel should decide what it would do next if that didn't happen. Meanwhile, negotiations over the second phase of the deal have yet to begin. The question remains, if the next phase doesn't happen, will fighting resume in Gaza to eliminate the terror threat? More in this report.
500 days. That's the number of days the hostages have been held in Gaza, amid rallies across Israel to keep up the pressure for the hostage ceasefire deal, and amid a lot of uncertainty over the second phase of the agreement. U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff gave his assurances that there will absolutely be a second phase to the deal.
Well, phase 2 is a little bit more complicated than phase 1. But phase 2 is absolutely going to begin. I've actually had calls this morning, I can tell you, about the sequencing of phase 2, setting forth positions on both sides so we can understand where we level set where we are today, and then continuing talks this week at a location to be determined so that we can figure out how we get to the end of phase 2 successfully.
Phase 2 of the deal is meant to include the release of all living hostages that were not included in the first phase. Most of those are now men who are soldiers or of fighting age, a detail Hamas has used as an extra token in negotiations in order to further its own agenda.
It just is a little bit more intricate and complicated in terms of how we bring the two sides together on this, because phase 2 contemplates an end of the war, but it also contemplates Hamas not being involved in the government and being gone from Gaza. So we've got to square those two things.
Reiterating the U.S. administration's position on the hostages, Witkoff also attended an event in Miami on Sunday, marking the 500 days since the massacre at the Nova Festival.
We are not leaving anybody behind.
That being said, however, negotiations for the second phase of the deal will only begin after Monday's Security Cabinet meeting. An Israeli delegation has been sent to Cairo for talks meanwhile, but only to guarantee the continuation of the first phase of the hostage deal, which came close to a collapse just last week. With 73 hostages still being held in Gaza, hostage families are keeping up the pressure amid so much uncertainty over the deal's future.
And now for more, we welcome to studio Major General in the Reserves, Eitan Dangat, former military secretary to 3 Israeli defense ministers and the former coordinator of government activities in the Palestinian territories in the IDF, and our correspondent, Robert Swift. Gentlemen, thank you so much. There is so much to unpack. And before we do that, we're going to go first to Tel Aviv. Our correspondent, Joe Brown, joins us from Hostage Square. 500 days in terror captivity, and still the nation waits for word on the fate of the hostages in Gaza. A tough day today, and now I-24 News sources confirming a short while ago Hamas could return several bodies of murdered hostages on Thursday. What can you tell us, Joe?
Yes, well, according to the sources to I-24 News, an Israeli official has said that the IDF is preparing for 4 or 5 bodies to return on Thursday. What will happen is they will be informed of a place where they will meet. Hamas will announce in the morning who these bodies will be, and then they will find a meeting place where the IDF ambulances will pick them up. Then they will go to Abu Kabir Forensic Institute in Tel Aviv, and then they will be identified. This is a specialist facility in autopsies that finds the causes of unnatural deaths, and only once they are formally identified will they speak to the family and inform them that some of the members of their family have been confirmed dead. So far, the IDF believes that 8 of the 14 remaining hostages as part of Phase 1 are dead. Only one of them has been officially confirmed, that is Shlomo Mansour. However, they have said that there is grave concern over the lives of Oded Lifshitz, who was 84 years old when he was abducted, and also for the Bibas family, for Shiri Bibas and her 2 very young children, Ariel and Kfir. So no names have been identified as to who will be arriving back in Israel on Thursday, but following that on Saturday, another 3 hostages will arrive living into Israeli territory.
One cannot imagine what the families of the hostages are all feeling right now. Joe, what are they saying there? What are they telling you?
Well, today is the 500th day of captivity for these 73 hostages, and throughout the day there have been multiple commemorations throughout the country. It started off with the hostage families outside the Knesset, who at 11:40 a.m. said that this was the start of a 500-minute fast. That takes us up until 8 p.m, so this is finished about 5 minutes ago, and now there is a large ceremony here at Hostage Square. There are thousands of people who are here to call for the return of not just those who will be arriving in the first phase of the ceasefire deal, but also hopefully to sign phase 2 of the ceasefire deal. And although 8 hours and 20 minutes, which is 500 minutes, doesn't seem like a lot, if you have ever partaken in a fast such as Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av, or even Ramadan, you'll know that those minutes, they feel so much longer because all you can think about is the food. And I spoke to one of the family members who was starting this fast. It was the adopted father of Idan Alexander, who was an American Israeli. He was a lone soldier in the IDF, and his adopted father in Israel, Doron, spoke to me. I asked him if he wanted to say something, like a direct message to Idan, and because a lot of the hostage family members are hearing about their family members and the work that they are doing to bring them home. They are hearing them through TV and radio signals whilst they're in captivity. And once I mentioned this to Doron, he mentioned something quite interesting to me. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
You know that a mother of a hostage that come back told me, they wrote me SMS. I tell you that I love to see the smile and everything, because every hostage that come back, it's like my family get reunion. She told me, talked a lot with the news and talked a lot with I-24. Yeah, then I told her, okay, and I hope that he doesn't see me. Idan, I just want to tell you that we do everything for you. 24 hours, your mother just come to Israel. She's going to speak today in the square. We don't stop till you will be home and all the other hostages. I know that we will be back, and don't forget, I decided that I fight not on the if, on the when. There was never if. They always don't when. And you will come back, and I tell you that you are my hero, and I give you a big hug.
The whole nation hoping those hugs do in fact happen, and Idan actually hears that message. So much strength from the families of the hostages. Correspondent Joe Brown at Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, thank you very much for that update. Still in studio, Major General in the Reserves, Eitan Dangat, and correspondent Robert Swift. 500 days, Eitan, 500 days since the darkest day in the history of the country, and look at where things stand right now. Your thoughts?
First of all, 500 days, it's emphasizing the super goal that Israel should continue to adopt and to choose as the first goal of the nation. It means the release of all the hostages, those who are alive and those who are not dead. But we don't have to head from one group that are alive to the other group. And this is something that we have to make it in a very short time, in a different way. Even you can call it phase 1 or phase 2. In my opinion, it's one phase that can be running. What will be after it is something like we have. I don't think there is any clear answer. When you just now report about the cabinet meeting, I don't see any plan from Trump. Trump was present in principles, and his principles was use what you have to do, choose what you have to do. And I think that the reason that we are now in such a junction is reason that give us, on one end, that we are ready from the military point, but we have to wait and to make sure to bring back the hostages. Even the war with Hamas will take for a long time. We will not destroy Hamas shortly, we will destroy them for a long range. I think also that besides, we have to pay attention to the fact that around us there is a change of the policy of some countries, Arab moderate countries like Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, etc., that are looking a little bit different to the situation after the statement that comes from Trump.
The Security Cabinet meeting to discuss the next phase of the deal has just started, Rob. But before we get to the details of what is likely being discussed, some of the options and scenarios, the nation just hearing a short while ago that bodies of murdered hostages are set to be returned on Thursday. This is gut-wrenching for the nation to hear, even though it was known that Hamas has been holding bodies, not only living hostages, but bodies for all this time.
Yeah, I think there's an understanding that as the hostage release goes on, that each week, each new part of this process, that there is a feeling among much of the Israeli public that it's going to get harder as it goes forward. I think that's part of the reason why this Saturday, when there was the release of the hostage, I was in Hostage Square, and there was sort of an almost palpable sign of relief among the crowd. Not just that the hostages, these 3 men had been released, but that they were in relatively healthy condition, as opposed to the 3 men who'd been released a week earlier. There is a sense, however, that the longer this process goes on, the worse the condition of the living hostages is likely to be, as well as increasingly it's going to be bodies coming back. That obviously is going to have an impact upon the Israeli public. And as we know, in general, politicians will follow the direction of the public to a certain extent. So we may therefore see that starts having a knock-on effect, influencing Israeli policy going forward, whether or not how hard it pursues the negotiations if it completes this through to phase 2 to phase 3, or if it decides actually that this process has gone on long enough and other options are available on the table.
At the same time, proof of life for some hostages, including David Cuneo. Talk to us about the kind of information that some families are receiving.
That's right. So I believe it was 11 families last week published information saying that they had received proof of life. Another one here in the Cuneo family. Essentially what this is as the hostages come back from Gaza, they're then debriefed by members of the Israeli security service, and that information is passed on to the families, whether that be hostages who remain inside Gaza who spent time with hostages who have subsequently been released, information on their condition, information on the treatment that they were receiving from their captors, that sort of thing. So some of this information is obviously painful to the family to hear. We've heard stories of ill treatment of the hostages, lack of daylight, torture, abuse, that sort of thing. But at the same time, there has been some information filtering out, which is a sign of hope for the families. There was one hostage, I recall last week, who it was passed to his mother that whilst he's been held in Gaza, he's been continuing to pray for his mother. She, being a religious woman, this was a small sign of hope for her. This sort of information does filter out with each one of these hostages who are released. It's possible that we'll have more messages like this which are information that have come from the most recently freed hostages.
An emotional roller coaster for these families, indeed. Briefly.
I think that the information that supplied by the hostages that returned, that were depth for hundreds of days without any contact to anybody else, and what they brought open a window and hope to families that their people there were not they didn't have any kind of information. And what they brought now hope. I see that if the government or the cabinet will take now a decision to cut it and not to release it, and we know what will be the result, will bring a very deep crisis in the Israeli society. And I think that when the train left already the station and moved in this phase under the American support with one leader in the area, I think that Witkoff is the United States leader in the area. In Washington, he has the support of Trump. We are on a way that gives us hope. The first time it will not be another chance to release them.
Certainly an agonizing wait, so much uncertainty, and we wait to see exactly how it all unfolds. And of course, what Hamas is going to do as well, given the pressure that it is facing and these evil stories that we keep on hearing about the conditions inside Gaza. 500 days.
And Hamas is not the same Hamas, because with all their way of demonstrate capacity, and they have it, I think that they understand that the situation outside of Gaza, Egypt as the main bridge to the world, Qatar and the others has their own problem after Trump came to the task of president. It's not the same comparison that we did.
Stay with us, gentlemen. Much more to discuss right now, though. We want to find out the latest developments out of Riyadh. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has met Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in the Saudi capital, and they are expected to be putting pressure on Saudi leaders to come up with a vision for a post-war Gaza. Rubio has already met with Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud in the Saudi capital. President Donald Trump's surprising suggestion that Gazans voluntarily relocate to other countries has been slammed by many nations in the Middle East, including Saudi Arabia. So, for more, we now go live to our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim. He joins us from Riyadh. Marco Rubio has some major meetings there in the Saudi capital on the back of his blitz visit to Israel. Of course, what is the U.S. Secretary of State hoping to hear from Saudi leaders when it comes to the war in Gaza? And of course, Donald Trump's grand plan for what he calls the Riviera in Gaza down the line.
Well, first, let's get you caught up, Anita. The meeting between Rubio and Mohammed bin Salman, which was joined by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and Middle East Peace Envoy Steve Witkoff, just ended, according to the State Department moments ago. That meeting, which included a dinner with the Crown Prince, lasted around 3 hours. So apparently very substantive, deep discussion there between the four gentlemen involved in that meeting. Of course, what the Americans want out of this is a way forward, a path forward. Donald Trump laid out his vision, his plan, his philosophy. In the end, he doesn't want to have to send military into Gaza. He doesn't want to have to spend the money to create the Riviera of the Middle East. Wants the Arab world to take care of that, which has been the American position for quite some time, and that the Arab world needs to do more to take care of the Gazans now, especially so. So he's looking for Saudi leadership on this issue. He's looking for the Saudis to group together with the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Emiratis, the Oman, anybody who has a position, anybody who has a stake in the Israeli-Palestinian and the larger Israeli-Arab conflict, to put skin in the game here and develop some cohesive, coherent plan going forward. And it begins with the Saudis because of their credibility in the region, because they don't really, answer to the Americans, so to speak, the way the Egyptians and the Jordanians do, in the way that they're more reliant on American military and economic aid. So above all, the Saudis need to take the reins here, according to the Americans. What does that plan look like? Well, it's going to have to be in tandem with those other countries. The Saudis can take the lead, but they can't dictate to everybody else how things need to be done. They're the ones that say, don't dictate to us, so they really can't dictate to others right now. So I think this meeting tonight was really to get a lay of the land, to see what kind of feedback Riyadh has been getting from their neighbors throughout the region in terms of the Trump plan and where to go from here, and try to develop some sort of a conduit here, some sort of smooth mechanism to move forward. Don't forget, we'll have the Arab Summit coming up on, I believe now, February 28th. It was delayed a day, but February 28th seems to be the landing spot for that. And a five-nation meeting will take place in just a few days to try to set the groundwork for that larger summit here. So this is just step one along the way, but a critical step in getting the Saudis on board with some kind of vision and leadership role going forward here, Benita.
Of course, the question will remain, if the Saudis say no, what does Trump and his administration do next? Looking even further down the line, Mike, where does all of this leave the path towards normalization, expanding the circle of peace? Discussions between Saudi Arabia and Israel before October 7th were so close. Obviously, a scupper in the works, to put it mildly. Is that discussion back on track? Is that likely being discussed in the meetings underway in Riyadh in the coming hours?
Well, certainly it's being discussed, and I think it plays to your statement you just made a moment ago. What happens if the Saudis say no? The Saudis are going to say no to the Trump plan. The bigger question is, what are they going to say yes to? It's not an all-or-nothing scenario here. They can say, no, you're not going to forcibly remove Gazans and take over the Strip by yourself, but they can say yes to a host of other things and find that common ground going forward. And one of those items might be normalization. Now, keep in mind, the Abraham Accords method before, although it may have been an accidental method, was we, being the Americans and the Israelis, will pull back. Last time it was on applying sovereignty over parts of Judea and Samaria in order to get other Arab countries on board with normalization. Could they possibly take a similar tack now? It's Donald Trump throwing out maximalist demands. Benjamin Netanyahu said just days ago that he wants the Saudis to open up a patch of land for Gazans to move on to. You start to gather now that maybe they're going to offer to pull back on some of their more, I don't know if you want to call it extreme, maximalist, whatever, high demands, high rhetoric, in order to get the Saudis on board for some avenue, some opening toward normalization, Benita.
Live from Riyadh, senior U.S. correspondent Mike Wagenheim. Thank you very much, Mike. More to come from our correspondent in the Saudi capital in the coming hours. Now to the fragile ceasefire across the northern front. Israel is set to withdraw from Lebanon on Tuesday, with reports that the IDF might stay in 5 strategic locations in the south of Lebanon. The ceasefire deadline was already pushed out until tomorrow, February 18th. Hezbollah is also meant to vacate southern Lebanon, and the Lebanese army is supposed to be the only military presence there. Meanwhile, the IDF confirming it conducted an airstrike in the Lebanese city of Sidon on Monday morning, killing a senior Hamas commander. Mohammed Shaheen was the chief of Hamas operations in Lebanon. His plans to target Israeli civilians were backed by Iran. For more, Major General in the reserves, Eitan Dangot, your sense of what happens. The deadline expires tomorrow. What then?
As it looks, the Israeli army will withdraw besides 5 important points, tactic points, that have advantage to observe and control geographical area, and to give those who are living on their back few hundred meters from there inside after the defense, northern to defense, it will give a kind of self-confidence to the civilians to return. But I think that Israel should keep its right to be active offensively, like today, like a few hours ago, against any kind of offensive activities by terror organization, by Hezbollah, by Hamas, and also by moving arms from Syria to Lebanon. Israel should this kind of keep. On the other end, I think it gives like umbrella to the Lebanese government and president to be centralized in their interior problem. And the last but not least, this is the main situation that I remember since '84, that you see Hezbollah in such a low situation, and we have to use it, to exploit it, and to do all we can to lower this organization and to give Lebanon a chance to live.
Hezbollah, though, the head at least, Naim Qassem, saying Lebanon must not accept any concessions of 5 points or anything. Robert Swift, your thoughts? I think, just to the point that we were just hearing about, there's a danger here that Israel remains in these 5 locations indefinitely, and that then acts as a recruiting sergeant for Hezbollah. Hezbollah was founded as an organization to chase Israel out of Lebanon. In the end, Israel did leave in 2001. Hezbollah has claimed that Israel retains parts of Lebanon in the Chuba Farms area. This acts as a way for Hezbollah to drum up support for itself, and has enabled it to cloak itself in legitimacy inside Lebanon. Now, we've seen since the defeat of Hezbollah by Israel in the autumn, much of Lebanese society, including a large aspect of the state, have gone after Hezbollah. As we just heard, Hezbollah is at probably the weakest they've been in decades. But there's a balancing act here. If Israel overplays its hands, it might find it is in fact strengthening Hezbollah, or it is unifying Lebanese society against it. Whereas if it acts in the way it has done, there are ramifications which can occur, which are to Israel's advantage. We saw that in Syria, the fall of the Bashar al-Assad's regime, which cut the Shiite axis. That was thanks to what happened to Hezbollah. And so there are advantages here for Israel if it plays its cards right. Watching all the developments across that northern front, going to be very interesting. The deadline expires tomorrow. Gentlemen, stay with us. Much more to discuss. Right now, though, a very quick break. When we get back, our coverage continues on The Rundown. Stay with us.
You live in Israel or you are preparing for your Aliyah? Congratulations. You have a smartphone? Perfect. Download the Olim app for free and discover everything we have to offer. Booking medical and administrative appointments, bills paying, debt verification, instant translation, contractor recommendation, request tracking, and much more. And if you can't manage it on your own, our team speaks your language and assists you with all your procedures in Israel, starting from 199 shekels per month, unlimited and for the whole family. Don't hesitate any longer. Download the app or contact us.
Copper, heat therapy, cold therapy, Theralite warm-up, microcurrent tech, extension handle, This is the Prosage Thermo Copper, the latest percussion massage gun tech advancement available from Evertone. The Prosage Thermo Copper is the only 6-in-1 percussion massage gun with warm-up technology, hot and cold therapy, microcurrent, and now are you ready for this? The benefits of copper. Get deep muscle warm-up technology and a professional athlete-level massage for full body recovery and relief. Back in 2018, Evertone's invention of the Prosage created the craze in the market for advanced professional-level percussion massage. Featured on The Talk, Entertainment Tonight, CNN, and others, the Prosage Thermo Copper 6-in-1 is a powerful percussion massager with our patented Theralite warm-up technology, advanced copper head therapy with unique copper benefits, our proprietary heat therapy head for deep muscle penetration, and the cold therapy head for soreness and inflammation. Microcurrent tech for pain recovery and restoration, and it even comes with our newest extension handle, so you can reach anywhere on your body. This makes the cordless Prosage Thermo Copper 6-in-1 with 5 unique massage heads, the most advanced professional level massage gun available. The gold standard in massage guns is now the Prosage Thermo Copper with targeted pain relief.
Our coverage continues. Several threats on several fronts, and Iran is defending its nuclear program a day after Israel and the United States vowed to counter the Islamic Republic's nuclear ambitions. Jerusalem and Washington are determined to thwart Iran's nuclear plans and its influence in the Middle East. Benjamin Netanyahu saying as much on Sunday after his meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Jerusalem. Rubio saying Tehran was behind everything that threatens peace and stability in the region. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman responding earlier in the day.
Political statements and inflammatory remarks are certainly not helpful and go beyond the responsibilities of the International Atomic Energy Agency. We hope that a genuine reconsideration takes place in this regard. Threatening others is a blatant violation of international law and the UN Charter. Also, when it comes to a country like the Islamic Republic of Iran, the response is clear. They cannot do a damn thing.
Now, as Israel marks the devastating milestone 500 days since October 7th, and questions remain around the fate of the 73 hostages still in terror captivity, a bipartisan U.S. Senate delegation led by Senator Lindsey Graham is in Israel. The delegation visiting the Museum of Tolerance in Jerusalem on Monday morning with some hostage families. The senator holding a press conference a short while ago, stressing that the #1 priority of the U.S. government is to get the hostages home and to help the Israeli government negotiate for the release of all the hostages. Take a listen.
Hamas. We met with the hostage families. Thank God for those who have been released, and let's pray and work hard to get every hostage home. It is the goal of President Trump, the Prime Minister, and all of us to bring all the hostages home. There's a second goal that we all share, that Hamas will not be in charge militarily or politically in Gaza ever again. We have a resolution that Senator Blumenthal and I introduced that hopefully we'll take up next week in the Senate that says it is the sense of the United States Senate that Hamas cannot be in charge of Gaza politically or militarily. They must go.
They must go. Major General in the Reserves, Eitan Dangat, your thoughts on exactly that?
I think, first of all, it's very important this support, demonstrate this support and coming in such a sensitive time. I think that it's a multiply power for the Israeli policy now in the Middle East. The change in the president in the United States brought a backwind. I don't know to translate what will be the results, but the atmosphere give, I think, the Israeli government and to Bibi Netanyahu a lot of options that it haven't had in the past. On the other hand, I think there is a lot of pressure on Hamas and on others that didn't be in the past. What does it mean? It means that, in my opinion, we are very close in such a sensitive way. If Bibi Netanyahu decide to return the hostages now and to give his efforts to it under the American support, it will be much more freedom for the future. And it will get the Israeli national support interiorly that it didn't have for many months at the past. It means to go on this range. On the other hand, if we are going to go inside for offensive activities now against Hamas, I think that at the end game of it, we will have much more to lose, because at any end game, we will beat Hamas. The question, how our nation will stand in the back. And we need to return back the nation after what happened of the 7th of October. And these visits and these declarations give us a lot of backwind to do it in this way.
Let's find out more about this visit right now. And we go to our correspondent, Balir Sladin. He joins us live from Tel Aviv. A significant moment in the war, devastating milestone, 500 days since October 7th. So talk us through the significance of this visit right now, the bipartisan U.S. Senate delegation, and the messaging from Senator Lindsey Graham just moments ago.
Yes, Benita, the messaging came not only from Senator Graham, but all the 6 senators and also, of course, the others that did not come to the press conference, but they share the same message that the U.S. Democrats and Republicans stand with Israel, and that's why they are coming here to show this solidarity on the 500th day of this war. They have told us that they have met, or they managed actually to meet over the 24 hours with the Prime Minister, with the Defense Minister, with the Speaker of the Parliament, and with others, including also trips to Jerusalem to speak to families of hostages, which they have said, that it was the most emotional meeting of this trip. Now, beside the things that you just showed that Senator Graham talked about regarding Hamas and Iran, and the fact that Hamas cannot control Gaza militarily or politically, he has given us also some more insight regarding the sanctions that President Trump has imposed on the ICC. The senator has told us that while he was talking to the Prime Minister today, they both agreed that the first threat over Israel is, of course, the Iranian threat, the fact that Iran could have a nuclear weapon, but the second one is the ICC. That's what the Prime Minister and Senator Graham has said. He thinks that this is an existential threat, and the ICC will start with Israel and then come after us. As he told me, he thinks that the sanctions should not be only on the ICC, but also in any country that threatens to actually arrest the Prime Minister of Israel or the former Defense Minister Gallant, and he thinks that we need to crush the concept of the ICC, as he is saying. Now, he gave me also some more details about the fact that we were very, very close, apparently, to normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel just on the 6th of October, the senators Ernest and Blumenthal, that both are here, were in Riyadh meeting with MBS, and they said that he was very enthusiastic, and it was a matter of days of making history. That's what Senator Graham has told me, but he still thinks that we should be optimistic because there is no other option, only the option of peace, as he told me.
Thank you so much, correspondent Balir Sladin in Tel Aviv. Interesting that our colleague Mike Wagenheim in Riyadh was discussing exactly that out of the meetings just moments ago in the Saudi capital. Thank you so much for your coverage, as always. 500 days since October 7th, the killing rampage and mass abduction. Right now, 73 hostages are still in terror captivity. The only woman still being held in Gaza is Shiri Bibas. The only children still in captivity, her sons, Ariel and baby Kfir. Look at your screen. Shiri's husband, Yarden, was freed from captivity in recent weeks. He is now in Israel waiting for word on his family. We now welcome Yossi Schneider, the cousin of Shiri Bibas. One cannot imagine. Thank you so much for joining us. 500 days since that horrific day, that footage of Shiri and then 4-year-old Ariel and baby Kfir is etched in our hearts and our minds for all this time. And of course, Yarden coming home, thank goodness, and what a relief. And then, of course, this uncertainty, all these questions. So to start, we appreciate the sensitivity around Yarden's privacy. So what can you share? How is Yarden doing?
He's okay, if we can say okay. He's trying to get better. He's trying to heal, but he can never be himself again until Shiri and the kids will be back. So we have a lot of work with him.
One can only imagine. 500 days ago, he left that shelter in Nir Oz to protect his family. He survived physically in captivity and the psychological manipulation too, and returned to this unimaginable reality. After waiting for 484 days, what did it feel like for you to see Yarden coming home? Can't imagine that moment. And for the community of Nir Oz as well.
Yes, and for every hostages that came back, it's a very joyful moment, even though you saw the footage of some of them that came back in a very bad physical situation. But still, if we look on the good side of it, they came back and they can start working on themselves and try to get back to a normal life, if it's something that we can say. So we are happy for every hostage that came back. With Yarden, it's a little bit complicated because we were very afraid about what he knows and don't know about Shiri and the kids. And we were afraid and we were very concerned to how to tell him that Shiri and the kids are still hostages, that they were still by the end of Hamas, and we have zero information about it. And I want to say something. You speak about the 500 days. People hear 500 days and they have no clue what is 500 days. It sounds you can't really comprehend what is 500 days. I want to describe you something. Kfir was kidnapped when he was 8.5 months old.
Right.
8.5 months old. And now, more than months ago, we mark his second birthday. He's 2 years old. Think about a baby that's been kidnapped from his bed, from his crib, when he was 8.5 months old, and now he's more than 2 years. Think about how time it is. It's not 500 days, it's eternity, especially in these ages.
It is just unimaginable. One cannot even think what you and your family have gone through, and Yarden, of course, and as you say, it wasn't clear what he was told and wasn't told. We saw the psychological manipulation video, that horrific video from terror groups early on in the war, and obviously that terror, those threats, that manipulation continued. What can you share about what Yarden did in fact know? Is there any information you can share at this point about what he understood, about what was actually happening in Israel in all that time that he was in captivity?
He didn't know exactly what's happening in Israel because he wasn't. He didn't see TV. He wasn't connected to the news. He only knew what the terrorists told them, what his captivators told him. About Shiri and the kids, as you know, Hamas told them that they are dead, and like us, he heard what he heard, but he still kept this optimistic. He tried to believe that they are lying, and when he come back, we told him what we know. We understand that we don't know anything, so he's in the same situation like we are. No, between life and death, between knowing and not knowing, between it's I don't know even how to describe it to you. I don't know if people can understand what it is that your family has been kidnapped and gone for 500 days, for a year and a half, and you don't know anything about them. You don't know if they're alive or not, if they're getting treatment or not, if they've been separated from their mother or not, if they will come back, if you will ever see them again. It's not they're like in a trip in Thailand and they lost connection and they're calling us like 6 months just to say hello. They're in hell, in Gaza, in some tunnel underground, without daylight, without food, without water, without toilet, without the basic things that people need to survive. And they are children, they are infants. I'm saying that time and time again, they're not supposed to be there. Even in war, even in the worst war in the world, there is laws. You have to follow laws. And the fact that there is 2 children over there, and then the world doesn't scream right now, and all the human rights organization doesn't scream right now, and nobody says anything and allow things like that to happen, okay? It's only making a huge mistake, because it will happen again. And again and again and again. And then what you're gonna say if you allow something to happen the first time? Okay, you have nothing to say when it's gonna happen again, and the world just keeps silence. And we are waiting for so long to hear like the smallest info from them. They shouldn't be in any humanitarian release. They should. There is not supposed to be any discussion about them. They just need to be released, because it's illegal. It's illegal. And the world and the UN and the Human Rights Organization, the Children Organization, the Women Organization, all those I don't know how to call them, okay? Those just holding their chair very tight and not saying the right things. Just because I don't know what the reason is. If it's from anti-Semitic, if it's just because they're scared to lose their job, I don't know. They're losing their values for what? For more money? For what? I just can't understand that.
It doesn't make any sense. The silence, the deafening silence from women's groups, children's rights groups, as you're pointing out, the Red Cross, of course. We're looking at these images every week of the Red Cross ferrying hostages back to Israel. But where were they throughout this war? Where were they when it came to getting to women and children, civilians taken out of their homes? Those questions remain. What do you make of it?
It's a joke. It's a joke. The Red Cross is the red taxi. Mm-hmm. It's not the Red Cross. That's what they're using to take a taxi from one part of Gaza to Israel. Where were they for so long? Why don't they bring medicines for hostages? Why don't they make sure that the hostages eating right and they're getting the medical treatment that they need? They just come into Israel, to the jail in Israel, when the Hamas terrorists, the Nukhbas, the one that killed our people, getting 3 meals a day, getting shower, toilets, and getting all the supplies that they need, and they come to check them and make discussion about Israel. When our hostages didn't get even the smallest medicine or the smallest care. I don't know if Kfir know what's his pacifier, because he didn't have a pacifier. Okay, nobody cares. Nobody cares. So if they want to be a red taxi, and the UN and Europe and US and everybody wants to pay for that, let them spend their tax money for taxes.
It's unconscionable and it's a crime. There's no doubt about it. We know that all women and children should have been freed by now, but the evil of Hamas and the psychological manipulation of Hamas knows no bounds, as we all know. No official word on Shiri, Ariel, and Kfir. Nobody knows what to believe. Over and above coping with this emotional roller coaster and the agonizing weight, what is your sense of the increased pressure in recent weeks, specifically out of the United States and President Donald Trump? Do you think this can make the difference to get all the hostages back home as soon as possible?
President Trump and Steve Witkoff and all the other people are our saviors. Okay, those are the one that we looked for them. They are the one that we believed in. And they are the one that made the change for this deal, and hopefully they will continue, that all the hostages will come back. They are our saviors. Nobody did what President Trump did. Nobody did that. Nobody spoke like he spoke. Unfortunately, all the leaders of the world, all those hypocrite liars, leaders of the world, just sitting and watching TV and doing what they're doing, and you just don't care. I don't know if it's because because we are Jews, because we're Israelis, or because they are just a coward and hypocrite, but they are not doing anything. And thank you, President Trump. I don't know if you're going to see that, but thank you for everything that you say about that you're doing.
Yossi Schneider, we hope that Yarden and all your family knows how the heart of the nation is with you. We appreciate you speaking to us at this incredibly difficult time on the rundown. Thank you very much. We're hoping and praying for good news. Yossi Schneider, thank you once again,
Thank
as
you.
always.
Thank you. Good night.
No words. No words, Eitan Dangot. Your thoughts?
When I'm thinking about the Bibas family, and we are talking about so many people, but I think they are the symbol of this tragedy that happened to us on the 7th of October. And the cynic way how these murderers, Hamas, are using them, even now, when it's very unclear what is their situation, whether they are alive or not alive, how the way they brought their father, the head of the family. And I think that we have not to forget it, and we have to put it as our flag for the future, in our duty to defend our civilians and our duty how to educate and to grow up our children. Kfir Bibas is the youngest baby or the youngest human being that was kidnapped in this situation in his age of 8 months. And I think that there is in Gaza Shlomo Mansour, age of 85. He is the eldest one. And when you are talking about it and you think about the reaction in the world towards what's happening in Gaza, the way our BBC is comparing them to prisoners, yes. A baby 8 months old is a prisoner. You understand which world we are living, and they bring United Kingdom. As BBC is talking about it, not once and not twice about it. And the Secretary General of the United Nations, and the way the Red Cross, I think it shows us the poverty and the illness of this world, how they behave to such scenario. And what is brought us? We have to come with Hamas to close, to punish them, but only after these people will be back home. And I really hope and have a prayer that the Bibas family are alive. I don't know to estimate. I hear rumors and I hear everything. But one thing, we should keep it in our memory, in our heart, in our head, as one of the major tragic things that happened to us by the way we are looking about this poor family.
Looking at the pictures of Ariel and Kfir, it's just difficult to process. Innocent babies, children, snatched on the 7th of October, and right now we don't know where they are and if they're coming back. We don't know any details. Hamas has yet to confirm anything. Yossi Schneider saying just a short while ago that Donald Trump is a savior in this process. Very briefly, Robert Swift, your thoughts of the way hostage families are looking to the US for some kind of answer right now?
I think they're looking towards the US because, for so long nothing was happening here. The war had seemed to drag on for month after month. They're looking for any change that they can see. Obviously, for the whole world, but particularly for Israel right now, a change in the White House is a change, which has ramifications in many theaters. We're definitely seeing that here. And so, of course, the hostages' families are looking for any help they can get, and they look to the White House for that help.
Correspondent Robert Swift, Major General in the Reserves, Eitan Dangot, thank you very much for being with us on this very difficult day on the rundown. Now, changing gears completely, archaeologists are returning to Syria's war-ravaged sites, hoping to restore Palmyra's ancient ruins and revive tourism. More in this report.
Once a jewel of the ancient world, Palmyra now bears the scars of war. Experts and archaeologists are returning to Syria's heritage sites, hoping to restore what was lost and revive a tourism industry that once flourished.
Syria has a treasure of ruins. In the past, it was a destination for lovers of history and antiquities from all over the world. It is crucial to develop plans for the tourism sector in a way that aligns with Syria's historical identity.
But years of war have left deep wounds. Palmyra changed hands multiple times, suffering destruction at the hands of the Islamic State and subsequent military operations by Syrian government forces and their Russian allies.
The site was heavily damaged during battles between the regime and ISIS. Shelling weakened its walls, and even the bridge leading to the entrance was affected. The area around the military barracks hill, where Russian forces were stationed, also suffered significant damage.
Beyond physical destruction, looting has also taken its toll. Many artifacts were stolen and smuggled out of Syria, some of them flagged by Interpol.
We saw extensive illegal excavations inside the tombs. The Palmyra Museum was in a deplorable state, with missing documents and stolen sculptures. In 2015, we documented smuggling of 22 necropolitan sculptures, 7 of which were later recovered in Idlib province.
Once a thriving hub on the Silk Road, Palmyra's past is tied to both commerce and conquest. In the 3rd century, it was the capital of an Arab kingdom led by Queen Zenobia, who defied Rome before being defeated. More recently, the site gained notoriety for the Tadmor prison, where thousands of political opponents were reportedly tortured under Bashar al-Assad's rule, before ISIS militants demolished the facility. The Islamic State's occupation of Palmyra led to further devastation. The group blew up the temples of Bel and Balshamin, along with the city's famous Arch of Triumph. They also executed 82-year-old antiquities scholar Khaled al-Assad, who had dedicated his life to preserving Palmyra's history. During Syria's war, Fakhr al-Din al-Ma'ani Castle, a 16th century fortress overlooking the city, became a strategic military outpost for Russian forces.
Our field visits after the liberation revealed sites that need urgent intervention to prevent further collapses. Museums also require electronic documentation to establish a comprehensive national database of Syria's historical treasures.
Despite the destruction, local tourists are slowly returning, and experts hope that, with time, international visitors will follow. UNESCO has indicated that restoration efforts may be possible if security conditions improve.
That report by our Yulia Pobogailova. And with that, we wrap up this edition of The Rundown. I'm Benita Levine in Tel Aviv. Thank you for watching.
You live in Israel or you are preparing for your Aliyah? Congratulations. You have a smartphone? Perfect. Download the Olim app for free and discover everything we have to offer. Booking medical and administrative appointments, bills paying, debt verification, instant translation, contractor recommendation, request tracking, and much more. And if you can't manage it on your own, our team speaks your language and assists you with all your procedures in Israel, starting from 199 shekels per month, unlimited and for the whole family. Don't hesitate any longer. Download the app or contact us.
Shalom. ¿Qué me trae por aquí? La necesidad impostergable de 600 millones de hispanoparlantes que ahora necesitan escuchar el mensaje judío e israelí en tiempos difíciles. ¿Cómo lograrlo? Cuento con ustedes para continuar llevando a lo más alto del mundo mediático una inquebrantable diplomacia pública al servicio de la verdad sin concesión alguna.
The 7th of October set in motion a chain of events. Today, Israel's enemies are severely weakened, but not defeated, and the balance of power is shifting. This region never rests. And for its own survival, Israel needs to keep its finger on the pulse. If you want to better understand, if you want to hear voices you won't hear elsewhere, then tune in daily to Middle East Now on i24 News. Want to stay on top of the news no matter where you are? Introducing i24 News' brand new news website. On our website, you'll find all the latest articles, interviews, and live broadcasts. Everything you need to know right at your fingertips, whenever you want it. So what are you waiting for? Download the i24 News app today. The 7th of October set in motion a chain of events. Today, Israel's enemies are severely weakened, but not defeated, and the balance of power is shifting. This region never rests. And for its own survival, Israel needs to keep its finger on the pulse. If you want to better understand, if you want to hear voices you won't hear elsewhere, then tune in daily to Middle East Now on i24 News.
Welcome to Jewish World Weekly on i24 News. I'm Emily Francis. Every week, we're focusing on stories, issues, and personalities of Jewish interest here in Israel and throughout the diaspora, the global Jewish community. And we start with our top 5 items in the Jewish world, presented by Lynn Plochmeyer. Lynn.
Thanks, Emily. Here are the top 5 items in the Jewish world this week. 2 nurses in a Sydney hospital have been suspended after saying in a viral video that they would kill Israeli patients. Speaking in an online chat room with an Israeli TikToker, Ahmad Bashar Nadir and Sarah Abu Lebde said that they had already sent Israeli patients to Jahannam, which is the Arabic word for hell. New South Wales State Health Minister Ryan Park said that the nurses have been, quote, stood down immediately, pending an investigation. 3 of the largest Jewish denominations in the US are suing the Trump administration for allowing immigration raids in synagogues. The governing bodies of the Reform, Conservative and Reconstructionist movements filed a suit in DC after the Trump administration reversed an order that prohibited immigration and customs enforcement from operating in, quote, sensitive locations such as churches and synagogues. Several synagogues sheltered immigrants at risk of deportation in Trump's first stint in office. Leading members of the UK's Jewish and Muslim communities signed a landmark agreement to improve interfaith dialogue amid heavy tensions. The Reconciliation Accords, also known as the Drumlanrig Accords, were signed at Buckingham Palace alongside King Charles and are aimed to ensure that Jewish and Muslim communities can navigate challenges together while fostering mutual respect and solidarity. The UK has seen a spike in both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia following the October 7 attack and subsequent Israel-Hamas war. The predominantly Muslim country of Azerbaijan will be sending a Jewish participant for this year's Eurovision contest. Asaf Mishiev is the lead singer of Mama Gama, which will represent the country in Basel this year. He went to a Jewish school in Baku and says he is heavily influenced by Israeli and Hebrew music. And a self-described queer, Yiddish, anti-Zionist, anti-capitalist, vegan and kosher cafe is set to open in New York 2 years after it closed its doors in Scotland. The Pink Peacock Cafe caused a stir in Glasgow with its anti-Zionist, Jewish stance and anarchic merchandise, including stickers calling for the abolition of the police. It closed down in 2023 after receiving anti-Semitic hate from fellow leftists. Those are the top 5 items in the Jewish world this week. Back to you, Emily.
Controversial rapper Kanye West has done it again, this time in a big way and is sending shockwaves around the globe. The rapper, who now calls himself Ye, paid several $1 million for a Super Bowl commercial simply to promote his website selling T-shirts with swastikas on them. Similarly, he posted on X that he's a Nazi and professed his love for Adolf Hitler. After the ADL and other Jewish organizations called for Elon Musk to take down his X account, Ye ended up deleting his own account. His website, meanwhile, selling the anti-Semitic T-shirts, has also been taken down, and now he's being sued by former employees for alleged anti-Semitic and misogynistic comments. Joining us now from London is entertainment journalist Josh Rome. Thank you for being here. All very disturbing as we have watched this story unfold. Now, this is the second time in 3 years that he has gone on a rampage professing his views as a Nazi and a fan of Adolf Hitler. What do you have to say about it?
It's beyond disturbing, quite frankly, but I think what people need to realize is just how dangerous this man is, because I think he crossed several lines this week. It's one thing going on Twitter. This is a man as well who has been diagnosed with bipolar. So when it came to his tweets, people took a very nonchalant attitude because people thought, oh, this is the ravings of what looks like a madman. Whether he is or not, that's a question. You know, he does have bipolar, as I said. But we thought, and a lot of people thought, better to not give it airtime, better to not even give this man a platform when it came to his tweets, however deranged they were. However, the Super Bowl ad and that website crossed several boundaries, because what he was effectively doing, he was, by selling these T-shirts with these Nazi logos, these Nazi paraphernalias, this Nazi paraphernalia alongside his deranged tweets, what he was effectively doing was not just endorsing hate, but monetizing it corporately, earning potentially millions of dollars, emboldening this attitude as if it was a mainstream product. That in itself is incredibly disturbing. It is also dangerous, because when we're living in a world where anti-Semitic incidents are at an all-time high, the highest they've been since the Holocaust, since the 30s, since the 40s, and then you have a man who is very influential in the music industry. He's still working on music with his own daughter. He's producing her album. When you have a man with millions of fans still, a huge influencer on a worldwide scale, promoting a product on not just the biggest stage in America, the Super Bowl, but effectively to the world, and trying to normalize it, trying to normalize the idea of the elimination of the Jewish race, that is not just deranged, it is dangerous.
And it's evil and it's cruel, but let's also talk, you know, responsibility also lies in other people's hands. Listen, I mean, the Super Bowl is not just the United States. I mean, it was seen this year, the highest rated Super Bowl in a very long time, 130 million people. And everybody knows half the people watch the Super Bowl, not even for the game, but for the commercials. So is there also accountability for whoever took his money and agreed to put something like this on the air?
Yes, I think there absolutely there needs to be accountability, because the fact of the matter is, even before the Super Bowl, yes, they might not have been aware of what the contents of the Yeezy website was, which is selling one product and one product only, and that was that Nazi T-shirt. But at the same time, Kanye was, before the Super Bowl, he was going on his rant. The sponsors, whoever was behind the broadcast, should have seen that this man was espousing deranged and dangerous, not conspiracy theories, deranged and dangerous anti-Semitism. We also know that Kanye West is prone to committing stunts. Look at what he and Bianca Censori did at the Grammys. You can see the images there when Bianca is going to take off her fur coat and reveal a very sheer dress where you can basically see her naked body. Kanye West is prone to stunts. So there needs to be accountability for the television broadcasters for taking his money, for taking his adverts. And then also by taking his money, you're taking the money of an anti-Semite, of a very prominent and dangerous anti-Semite as well. So it's not just the actual product that he was selling, it's also who they're taking money from. So yes, there does need to be accountability.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And also, you know, we're talking about, okay, yeah, people say he's bipolar. I mean, again, that's not an excuse. And then we read that he's saying, no, that was a mistake. I have autism. So he's also using diagnoses to justify his behavior. So what can be done short of the fact his site is being taken down? He voluntarily took himself off of X. He is being sued. People are dropping him, his agent's dropping him, but it doesn't seem anything is going to stop this guy.
Well, this is the thing, America, and to be fair, the Western world, we are the land of the free, we are the land of free speech, but free speech does have limits. You cannot have hate speech. What can be done? Can he be arrested? Unfortunately, in the United States, it might be illegal to support Nazis in Germany and other countries, but it's actually technically, I've been reading this week, it's not actually technically illegal to support Nazis in the United States. So maybe, you know, laws might need to be rectified somewhere. Kanye definitely needs to be, he needs to get some sort of professional help. I think, you know, he is a danger to, as I said in my piece for The Sun this week, what he's been doing, not just what he's been saying, but the actions that he's been doing, this monetization of hate and this monetization of the idea of eliminating the Jewish people off the face of the earth, that's not just deranged. That is dangerous. It's now coming to the point where he's now a danger to society. So does he need to be put in a mental institution? Does he? I'm not sure, but he definitely needs to get help. But also it's on us as Jewish people to also keep calling this out, keep raising awareness, keep saying that this isn't normal. This should not be normalized. This absolutely cannot be normalized out of any way, shape or form. And I was actually at a dinner this week and a fellow journalist went to cover the Auschwitz commemorations this week. And he said to me, what struck him most was actually how the survivors of the Holocaust were saying, well, no, the anti-Semitism, it's the exact same now. And let's not forget, the Holocaust didn't start with the gas chambers. It was a slow build up from just generic Jewish hatred, from small fry Jewish hatred on the streets. And then it grew and grew and grew into pogroms and then this genocide and this threat of extermination. So it's on us, it's our responsibility as Jewish people to make sure we keep calling this out and to make sure that this is never normalized and the world lives up to the words, never again.
All right. Thank you very much, entertainment journalist Josh Rome.
Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, a chilling new report by the Jewish Community Protection Service says that in 2024, violent acts against Jews rose to the highest level in a decade in the wake of October 7th. This is in France. There were a total of 1,570 anti-Semitic attacks, even though slightly down from 2023. French Jews are no doubt on edge and have been for several years since the 2012 Toulouse Ozar HaTorah school massacre and the 2015 attack on the Paris Hyper Cacher market. Here's more from a leader in the French Jewish community talking about the increased physical violence.
You have, in the anti-Semitic attacks recorded in 2024, 65% attacks on people, and among these attacks on people, 10% violent physical attacks. What this says, first of all, is that perhaps we're not only dealing with prejudice, but hatred as the driving force behind these acts, because there is an aggressive anti-Semitism that has gradually developed in our country and which uses the situation in the Middle East as a pretext to justify itself. We used to think that anti-Semitism was perhaps graffiti or insults around places of worship. Today, it goes well beyond that, because French people identified as Jews find themselves threatened, sometimes even in their own homes, even in their place of work, in the name of the conflict, in the name of the Gaza issue, which is used as a pretext for these attacks. Anti-Semitism begins with the Jews in history. It never stops with the Jews. History bears witness to the fact that it has always revealed deeper ills, fractures that can divide and even bring down our society. We're in a period that I think is tragic from that point of view, because French society is in a bad way, and anti-Semitism is one of the indicators, among others. It's not just a question of ensuring that Jews live peacefully in France. It's a question of anti-Semitism, which has been an indicator of the flaws in our democracy throughout history. I recall the period of the Dreyfus affair. I obviously recall the period of the Holocaust. It makes us aware of what is threatening us today collectively. Through anti-Semitism, we are talking about Islamism, ideological drivers, populism too in general, ideological drivers that are a threat to our Republican framework.
Meanwhile, a group of French lawyers fighting against anti-Semitism and BDS recently came to Israel to meet with senior government legal officials. And in studio is one such lawyer, Johan Buskila, the director of the Finance Committee of Actions. And we are very happy to have you in studio. Thank you for being here. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you for having me. We are Action Avocat, a French association admitted to Paris Bar, and we are currently 200 members and more, over than 800 members in the group. And basically we are fighting in France against anti-Semitism, disinformation, terrorism and boycott.
So explain, we look at the statistics, over 1,500 acts of violence against Jews in France since 2024, and it seems that they're getting even more violent, physical violence. Explain what it's like for Jews living in France with these conditions.
The rise of anti-Semitic violence since October 7, of course, raised a serious concern for Jewish communities. It's a long-standing issue in France. Even before the attack of Toulouse in 2012, in 2012, and hyper-cacher attacks, all the terror attacks, and before also, and more recently with the rape of a 12-year-old girl that you heard, and it's a long-standing issue in France. But this time, since October 7, we can note two significant developments. First one, anti-Semitism reached record level. The French Minister of Interior, Bruno Retailleau, recalled recently a sadly proportion. Jews represent less than 1% of the French population and more than 57% of the racist act in 2024.
Wow.
This is the first. And second development that we can note is that with October 7, we can consider that anti-Semitism definitely took the form of anti-Zionism. And this new form of anti-Semitism allows people to be anti-Semitic in the name of the democracy, as Yankelevich put it a long time ago. And this explains why anti-Semitism in France is almost everywhere. In the university, in the streets, in social media of course, in the speech of parliament, political, and...
Scary.
Yes, so on a national level, we can consider that Jewish are afraid to show their Jewishness and hide religious symbols, at least in some cities. But they are resilient and they are ready to use all legal means.
Yes, well, we've seen a huge massive fighting back. Make sure never again means never again. Tell us what can be done from a legal perspective. What can be done in the legal community?
I think that we absolutely need to strengthen the legal framework of against anti-Semitism. A new project of law was proposed last year, but unfortunately it's still under discussion, and it will be under discussion for a long time. In the meantime, we just continue to fight, and I can explain you what we are doing.
Yeah, briefly, because we're running out of time. So, like briefs, lawsuits, letters to the government.
Yes, we need to organize our action in two parts. First, lobbying action and preventive action. We want to prevent hate speech in school, hate speech and discrimination and harassment in university and schools. We make action against boycott in the university. This is a part of our action important. We write, we explained legal concept, what is genocide, what is apology of terrorism, and we participate to the national conference that is beginning today, led by the Minister Aurore Berger. And we are participating actively to this conference, and we have a lot of hope after this conference.
Something can be done through the legal process.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Johan Buskila, and enjoy the rest of your trip.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Here in Israel, more than 1.5 million people have a disability of some kind, which is 20%, and nearly 1 in 10 children has a disability. For nearly a half a century, a dedicated company or nonprofit called Bet Ezzy Shapiro has been providing life-changing services while also teaching this community leadership skills for the future. Joining us now by Zoom is Michael Lawrence, the Chief Advancement Officer at Bet Ezzy Shapiro. Thank you for being here, and hats off for all of the very important work that you all have done. You know, we know there's such a large percentage of people with disabilities here, whether born with them, injured in the Army and whatnot. We know since October 7th, a lot more people are coming home with these types of injuries. Explain why what you're doing is so important.
Well, thank you very much, and it's wonderful to have this opportunity to share what we are doing. Indeed, I mean, globally, the World Health Organization tells us that there's more than 1.6 billion people in our world who have a significant disability. That's a huge number. In Israel, perhaps 1 in 5 people have a disability. And of course, as you've already mentioned, since the war, we've had approximately 15,000 IDF soldiers now who are coming home with a disability. And this is a huge challenge. This has been a time of crisis for Israel over the last almost year and a half. And people with disabilities, we know from research done, really do suffer from anxiety and trauma during crisis, during times of instability, much more, even 5 times more than the general population. So while Israelis in general have faced enormous upheaval and trauma, for people with disabilities, physical, intellectual, developmental disabilities, the challenges are really quite significant. And Bet Ezzy, with its 45 years of experience in terms of developing therapies and models, has been able to step into that space and really provide some help and some support and some solutions when it's really been needed.
How have you been able to, continue? You've had services, like you said, for 45 years, but now we're seeing more numbers. Mental health professionals are spread very thin because we're at alarming levels. A study just came out just on the PTSD numbers within Israel. So how are we able to reach everybody in these times?
So what Bet Ezzy has done is it's taken what it has a good reputation for doing and a strong name in doing, and we've tried to do what we've always tried to do, which is scale our expertise. For examples, we have been leaders in the world of assistive technology and bringing communication devices and innovations into the world of children and adults who have difficulty speaking or actually can't speak with their physical voice. We've now taken that technology and the experience we have in the world of making homes into smart homes. We're now bringing that to soldiers. We are working now every week. Just last week alone, we had about 20 soldiers approach us for help as they move from hospital to continued rehabilitation, but in their home. And we're helping them now to communicate through the technologies in which we have expertise and to make their homes accessible for them. We believe very much that these soldiers and all people with disabilities, we want them to have the most significant independence and quality of life that they can have. And if we can bring the technological expertise, the therapeutic expertise that we have into their lives, that's what we aim to do. You mentioned mental health. There's a real crisis there. And we found during the war that there's a real significant gap in services for people with disabilities around mental health. All of us need mental health services at various times of our lives, and that goes too for people with disabilities. So Beit Izzy will be launching very shortly a residency center, an internship center, so that psychotherapists and psychologists will learn how to work also with people with intellectual and developmental disorders.
Right. I mean, it makes so much sense. You can work on your, physical limitations, but sure, emotional and, things that could come up during that healing process is so important. But also you're doing things like doing leaderships for young people, leadership programs, teaching them skills so they have a purpose for their lives. Tell us about that.
Well, we have at Beit Ezzy Shapiro not only therapeutic services, but we also have a leadership center. What does that mean? We bring together and we mentor groups of both youth and adults with intellectual and other disabilities, and we teach them. And in fact, we learn a lot from them. They're really leading us. How do we build an Israeli society that is the kind of society that we all want to see, a society that is accessible and inclusive of everyone, people of all abilities. So one of the examples during the war is that we have this tremendous group of youth, aged 13 to 15, who discovered that most of the bomb shelters, the public bomb shelters in Israel, where people run within a short amount of time, under missile fire, with sirens blaring, these bomb shelters are inaccessible. And they also found, when they went around the communities in Israel and around cities, they found that there was no resource for people to learn which bomb shelters, which missile shelters are accessible. So they worked really hard to speak with leaders in the community, with council members, with municipal leaders, and say, hey, folks, a good percentage of your community are people with disabilities. How can we make it easier for them to be sheltered and to be safe during wartime? A tremendous initiative by the youth themselves, and Beit Ezzy Shapiro was there to mentor them and help them reach these kinds of goals that they had for themselves.
Wow, so important.
Very, very inspiring.
You think about it, yes, a lot of homes now do have, private safe rooms, but it's true, you have an alarm. You can't go in an elevator. A lot of them are in the basement. I myself go down with my kids a lot of flights of stairs. You realize there's a whole segment of the population that, is in danger with not having things be accessible, for sure.
100%. And what happens then is that they say, well, we just won't leave our homes. And then a process of social isolation begins, as we saw during the COVID pandemic. Someone in a wheelchair or someone who is hard of hearing doesn't hear the siren, for example, begins to say, I'll just stay put. Socializing, I won't be able to do for now. And that's complicated, and that's also painful.
Part of the also the mental health challenges that maybe one day it will count as a disability, since so many people are suffering it, and we're now actually giving it a name. So thank you very much.